Thank you.
Hi.
How
Thank
you-
you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
We're really glad to hear your voice and to have you on our podcast for the first time.
Yes, and I was just singing Barry Manilow as
You
we
were.
got into our episode, and you guys are so impressed. I
I
can
really
see it
wish
all over your
we
faces.
could have the entire listening audience join us for that moment, for it was fantastic.
Oh,
Barry
The look
Manilow.
on Levi's face was like, "There's nothing about this song I like."
No, once the chorus really came in, I thought to myself, I still don't
You
like
saw
it.
evidence of epic.
I thought it was I could understand why people would like him
Yeah.
if you're into that sort of thing. Now, Barry Manilow, that would be what category would that be in?
Epic.
It's not a category. It's not a genre. Would it be?
I don't
smooth
know.
jazz?
No. I
classic
think it
rock.
was pop. Back in the day, I think it was pop.
Would
So
that
is that
be
called
like?
classic rock?
But Barry Manilow, I feel like that would be like old, like love-making playlist. That would be like, oh man, I gotta have a lot
no.
of Barry Manilow.
Seriously? Did you just say that?
I'm just
What
saying
is
that's what comes to
happening
my
right
mind
now?
when I hear Barry
Wow.
Manilow.
I'm going to stick with mine. I'm going to say it's like folksy pop, 70s music. Let's just go with
Folksy
that,
pop,
please.
Well, that's
70s.
funny, but you know the thing about the word pop, like when you hear pop now, you think, of course, Taylor Swift or you think Harry Styles, but Mozart was pop in his day. He wasn't
See?
classical music,
Hmm.
so
Right.
Barry Manilow could very well have been pop at one point. So today
Yes.
you would think of it as whatever throwback.
When I was
vintage.
a child and you were not even a thought yet.
I was a thought in my Lord's heart.
Perfect. Bring it back around, Levi.
Perhaps a nightmare, and it's hard. Who knows?
Oh my god.
One of the two. But yeah, like Beethoven,
Jennie,
that's
rein
pop.
him in, please.
You tell her good luck with that.
Oh, yeah, good luck with that to me.
Good luck with that. Lisa, you must be having the craziest week of your life. I mean, it's just such a big week for you.
It's
so
been
exciting.
a great week. I am thankful. And I also think that I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel with this message that I've often told people, believe it or not, this message simultaneously has almost killed me and saved me all at the same time.
I believe it.
And
Yeah.
I'll say, I've never said this about any of my other books, but this one's my favorite.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay, that's going to take some unpacking. And fortunately, I brought a shovel. So we're going to dig. We're going to dig today, Lysa
Wait,
TerKeurst.
you unpack with a shovel.
That's true. You unpack a
It's
suitcase.
a mixed metaphor. That's okay. We collect those at Proverbs 31 Ministries. So we're really excited every time one happens. And I'm just going to ask Chris, who's helping me today. I'm just going
You
to
should-
go ahead and text that
Write
over
that
to Barb.
down.
She usually sorts me out.
Collector.
Lisa usually is my go-to. Levi, what you're saying does not make sense. So I brought what would you unpack something with? I guess your hands. I just wanted a tool. That's what I
Well, you
wanted.
were trying to say we're going to dig deep, but
gonna
then
dig
you
deep.
switched it really quick to we're going to, with a shovel.
With a shovel.
I brought a
unpack.
shovel. We're going to
Unpack
dig
it.
deep. Well, yeah, you dig with a shovel. All right, fine. So, Lisa, you've written over 20 books, obviously lots of different Bible studies and ancillary products, but 20 different books that your hands have
Wow.
typed,
Wow.
which as an author, I have enormous respect for anybody who's written one book. And you just said on public record that this one's your favorite. Obviously, the last two are kind of like, you can't just read this one without the context of, it's not supposed to be this way. I feel like these two, without being so crassly called that, are a part one and part two of this journey of your life. Is that fair?
Yeah. I had someone tell me earlier today they feel like Forgiving What You Can't Forget is the third in a trilogy. I've never thought about my last three books being a trilogy, but I was like, that kind of makes sense because Uninvited was about rejection. And then It's Not Supposed to Be This Way is about shattering disappointments. And then Forgiving What You Can't Forget. So I guess they do kind of work together. But when somebody hears that in the context of a short conversation, they're probably like, wow, this woman really, she digs deep as she unpacks.
Right.
It's like,
With the
that's
shovel.
a lot.
With
you
a
know?
shovel as she
With a
goes through it.
shovel.
Wow.
Yes.
No, I see that. No, that's powerful.
Well, I just want to say I love this book. I've I'm a fan of you as a writer. I'm a fan of you as a human being
Yeah.
and a friend of yours. I'm grateful for that. But for those who are watching and not listening, you can see I'm holding it in my hands, Forgiving What You Can't Forget, which when you released it, I sat down and thought about it when I held it. I mean, I remember seeing it on my porch when the UPS dropped it off, and I sat there and I felt like it hit me hard as a weight when it landed on my porch, because I know this doesn't represent just a normal exercise in writing for you, which is always great. Another book's always great. It's always going to help people because God's word doesn't return void, and you have committed your life to teaching the Bible. But this book represented a price that was paid in what you lived through for this to exist.
Right.
You know, much like for us, Eyes of a Lion or The Fight to Flourish, which we would never have written without having gone through tremendous agony, you have faced in my mind is an unspeakable difficulty that you've been trusted with, and you've refused to let it be wasted. So I thank you for that, and I recommend everybody get this book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget. Obviously, you know, you generally speaking have an enormous audience of women, but I would recommend the men who are listening to this who have gone through anything that has made forgiveness a challenge for you, any kind of betrayal, any kind of infidelity, any kind of someone who's broken your trust in any regard. I just think everybody needs to read this book. And I'm going to ask you just in a minute to talk about just a little bit for the 3 people in the United States of America and broader listening audience who have not heard of you. There's 3 of them. And for those 3 people, just a little bit of the events that kind of led to you needing to write this book.
Well, thank you, first of all, for just giving me a space to be able to share that story. And in the context of a short podcast, it can sound like I'm listing off facts, but I just want anyone who's listening to know that behind each one of the facts that I share, there's months, years, a whole season of complete devastation. It was not a short journey. It's been a very long journey, and it's still a journey that I'm healing from. So this is still an ongoing process for me, for sure. But in 2016, early in 2016, I found out my husband was being unfaithful, and we'd been married over 20 years, raised 5 kids, and when our baby grew up and moved out, so did my husband, and we were separated 2.5 years. And, you know, it can sound like a fact when I just say it quickly, but, you know, that's a very, very long time, like 900 nights of waking up and reaching across to a man that used to be there, and he's not there anymore. And I didn't feel like I could survive one more day of it. I had no idea the journey was going to last so long. So it was painful. The probably the hardest part of what we walked through is that it was not a journey of disclosure and then immediate repentance and then winning me back and then reconciliation. It wasn't that. It was discovery, and then another discovery and another discovery. And it's like the trauma leaked into my life over a long period of time. And it's like I could hardly catch my breath and something else was happening. And it was long, it was brutal, and I'm still trying to heal from it. But I think one of the most profound moments of my healing journey was actually early on. We'd been walking through this for about 18 months, and then another discovery was made. And at that point, I had to look at Art and say, I love you, and I can forgive you, but I cannot share you. And I remember I said those words, like, I can forgive you, because it felt like the right thing to say. But then he went off, and we didn't have communication for several months after that, because he went and checked into a treatment center, and I was utterly by myself. And I went to my counseling appointment, and I remember my counselor saying, Lysa, do you want to heal? And I said, I really do want to heal. And then he said, today's a good day then for us to start working on forgiveness.
Wow.
And I remember I looked at him and I thought, are you high? Are you crazy? Like, there's no that it can be time to work on forgiveness because I'm not done hurting yet. I don't know how this story is going to turn out. I haven't had that epic conversation where Art says he's sorry and where he owns what he's done. And I haven't been assured that he's learned all the lessons he needs to learn so that he never hurts me again. So no, forgiveness not only feels unreasonable, but it feels unsafe. And so my counselor did a great thing for me. He said, well, let's don't start with forgiveness, then let's start with your pain. And he handed me a stack of 3x5 cards and told me to just start listing out all the facts of how I'd been hurt. And that was a great place to start. It was an important place to start. And so when I sat down to write the book, I don't come out swinging, shaking my finger and telling people, you know, I've spent 1,000 hours studying forgiveness in the Bible, and God says you have to forgive. While that is true, I did spend 1,000 hours studying forgiveness in the Bible, and God does say that we must forgive. I couldn't start there, so I could not have my reader start there either. So I start off the book with the pain, the enormous pain, and my very honest admission that I was quite resistant to forgiveness.
Yeah, and you really, it's so open. As I was reading the first chapter, I found you giving a spaciousness that would allow anybody to bring anything to the gray table with you for this conversation, regardless of what their pain is. And not even that they've been betrayed by a spouse, but that they feel like God's been unfair. And I think we've all, maybe even ways that we don't even realize, needed to have forgiveness brought into our lives. I mean, how broad do you think that is? I mean, how many people out there do you think are walking around with unresolved issues in their hearts?
I always say you can know when a person is walking around with unresolved hurt, pain, or trauma, some kind of trauma in their life. You can always know it if they're breathing. And so if someone is breathing, they have trauma in their life. And there's always some part of us that I think is in the process of healing.
Yeah, that's well said. So true.
And you talk a lot about different things that this is going to manifest in if it's not fixed, if it's not sorted. And you really open about some of the ways you were tempted to, what's the right word? Mask or, you know what I mean?
Or just kind of cover up bitterness. You know, I think as a Christian, we all hear the word bitterness and we're like, oh yeah, we're not that, you know?
Right.
When I sat down one day and I was like, okay, I'm going to write any evidence that could possibly be attributed to bitterness. I'm just going to make a little list. And after 2 pages, I was like, wow, bitterness is really hiding out in my heart in places that are so unsuspected and maybe a little more acceptable. And yet it is bitterness nonetheless. It's just not calling itself bitterness. So what I mean by that is like, you know, skepticism. When you can always know that some part of us is struggling with bitterness when you have a tainted perspective about yourself, others, or God. And if you have some sort of skepticism, cynicism, snarky comments, or internally rolling your eyes, or simmering resentments, you know, there's been some research done that says one of the number one indicators that a relationship will not survive is when there's simmering resentments. In other words, it's not the conversations we have that destroy our relationships. It's really the conversations that are never had.
Wow.
Well, and obviously we're not going to, spoil anything, but for those who have read, it's not supposed to be this way, and have heard now, the chance to read this book, that it didn't end with him separated. You eventually did come to a place where he did hit a place of repentance and coming back. You guys have had a vow renewal. We've watched you guys walk in this story and walk in this journey close up, and just seeing that redemption that wasn't, like obviously it can make it sound like it was just such a condensed thing. It was agony while you were going through enormous medical difficulties too.
Right.
Because that whole separation coincided with you having cancer and something wrong with your intestines. And just, I mean, you talked about licking the floor of hell would have been an upgrade in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is only too vivid.
Yeah. And I remember writing those words that I truly feel like I've licked the floor of hell and barely lived to tell about it. And that was a physical sense and an emotional sense as
Mm.
well. Um, and yes, Art and I have had a vow renewal, and I'm so grateful for that. But, and if Art were sitting here today, he would be very honest to say, part of our story is he was struggling with addictions, and that addictive cycle is vicious. And, it's still something that we're, dealing with today and working on. And so I'm so careful not to want to tie my story up in this neat,
Mm.
nice bow with like rainbows and unicorns. It's still a brutal journey, and it's so very daily. It depends on what day you talk to us. Like, it'll be like, oh man, today's a really good day. But you talk to us another day and we'll say, yeah, we looked at each other today and said, are we really going to make it?
Mm.
And I think people need to hear that, because
Yes.
otherwise they won't understand that this is not a finish line story, that it is a process. And when you talk about emotional healing and devastations and even forgiveness, we're still in process. But I think it's a beautiful place to write from, because everybody is in process.
Yeah.
And it was important to me as I wrote about forgiveness that I debunked the theory that forgiveness is only a decision. Because if it's only a decision, then we can feel like, okay, once I forgive, then I can never bring this back up again. And what do I do when I get triggered in my pain and I feel like I need to process this, but I can't bring it up again because I've already forgiven? And I think that's really damaging and limiting to people.
Mm.
And it was really helpful for my counselor to explain to me that forgiveness is both a decision and a process. We make the decision to forgive for the facts of what happened. And that's a marked moment in time. But then we must also remember that we have to walk through the emotional healing process to forgive for the impact that this had on us. And every trauma we experience is both fact and impact. And if we tell people that forgiveness means that they have immediate reconciliation, or that they have immediate emotional healing, or that trust should be immediately restored, then it's no wonder that people are hesitant to forgive, because they know that they haven't walked through that process yet. So I
Wow.
think it's important to understand we can be obedient to God, and we can say that we forgive for the fact of what happened, and still allow ourselves the emotional and necessary healing process of forgiving for the impact.
Yeah.
I love that. Was one of my favorite sentences, and I've never thought of forgiveness as a process. But because you think about it as like, well, once I've forgiven that, it can't come up again, and it's water under the bridge, and but
Mm.
the permission you give for both the person who offended and the person who's been offended to be on that journey of forgiveness, because the impact of the event has continual, ongoing, impact. And so you mentioned that you then have to reapply the blood of Jesus and reapply that power of forgiveness
Mm.
to even subsequent impacts from that initial event, and you have to almost forgive for each of those as they present themselves in the ongoing sense.
That's right. So, I mean, you guys have been through emotional trauma and devastation. So, triggers are a big part of what you'll experience when you've walked through something really, really difficult. And some people call them flashbacks. Some people call it, like mentally returning to the scene of the trauma or the event that happened. It's that marked moment in time where it's like it was such a devastation in life that you sort of define everything by your own personal BC and AD, like before crisis and after devastation.
Mm.
And I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys, but one of the most painful things for me is when my phone will send those memory movies from here's what you were doing on this day 4 years ago.
Oh gosh. Wow.
And it's like, I didn't create this movie. I didn't set it to music. I didn't even know that my phone was going to grab these pictures and put this together. I don't even know how that happens. But suddenly I'm standing in the grocery store and I get these pictures sent of what we were doing 4 years ago. And I know the timeline and I travel backwards. And I was being truthful, but Art was not.
Wow.
And so here we are standing at this smiling family vacation, and this enormous sense of grief hits me. And I wrote in the book, grieving is like dreaming in reverse. You know, when we dream, it's like we run into our future and paint these beautiful pictures of what we hope will be there when we get there one day. But grieving is when we run into our past and we think, I want that day back. I want that moment back.
Yeah.
I want that picture. I want to go back there. But for me, it's like double grief because my joy in that family photo from 4 years ago was very authentic. But I know I can do the math, and it's like, oh, wow. Like, I feel like such a fool. I was smiling on that day, and I had no idea what the real story was.
Wow.
And so I tend to that in the book, this healing process that can be so messy. And when we get triggers, you know, it is not a setback. It's not evidence that we're not healing. It's actually quite the opposite. It's the impact of that trauma is leaking into our life over time. And so when it hits me now, I know what to do with it. And I say, oh, okay, I've already forgiven this person for the fact of what happened. But now I need to have another marked moment of forgiving them for the impact. You know, I need to forgive them for the anxiety or the fear or, you know, the stress that this has caused me. And, you know, I think even Jesus knew this because when he taught us to pray, isn't it interesting, over half of the Lord's Prayer is around confession and forgiveness and being protected from the evil
You
one.
said it was 46 words or something like that.
Yeah,
of the
I mean, I
total.
literally counted the words, depending on what version of the Bible
126 in total, right? You said?
It's fascinating to me that he would make such an emphasis on forgiveness and confession. But look at the verbiage that he uses, like forgive us our debts as we forgive those who've created debts with us. You know, a debt is the emotional cost that this has had on us. And if someone does the equivalent of a $5 hurt in your life, you probably won't get triggered. But if somebody has created a devastation in your life that's a $5 million emotional debt, of course it's going to take quite a process to walk through of forgiveness.
Wow. Wow, Lysa. That is so helpful. I think, well, first of all, I'm just so grateful for you and how you have, you've literally like laid your life out in order for people to see that it's messy and it's not. I think so many of us, we just want the clear cut, like, okay, something was done to us, we forgave them, and now we're moving on. And like, we just want those boundaries around it, but it's not that. And even the fact of you saying today it's still a process, and you're still learning what it means to walk in forgiveness and do what you've written about. And thank you so much for showing us that it's not things perfectly in a box, but it is messy, but it's possible to keep walking, and it's possible to keep loving and to keep giving in the midst of it. And it really is such an example because, like you said, every single one of us is struggling in some way with this very thing, and knowing that it's not perfect and it's not pretty, but it's possible to keep walking forward. You're just showing us that it's messy, but it's possible to keep loving God and loving others in it. And so I'm just thankful for you showing us the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Well, and I think we also have to have the right goal in mind, you know, and if I make the ultimate goal that reconciliation is going to happen, then I'm already setting people up for failure because reconciliation doesn't always happen.
Right.
And, you know,
Wow.
and if we make reconciliation the ultimate goal, then that's saying that my life is good as long as the other person fully cooperates forever and ever and ever. But we all know we do not have the ability to control another person. We can't, like, I can't make Art cooperate with the ongoing healing process. That's his choice.
Right.
So we have to have the right goal in mind. And my goal is I am going to live a redemption story with God. And no one can take that away from me. So if it includes reconciliation for us, then that's awesome. And if it doesn't, well, I'm still pursuing a redemption story with God. And I think some people who know our story, you know, they say, well, of course, Lysa, you can forgive because you had reconciliation. And I'm like, actually, I think reconciliation sometimes makes the forgiveness process more complicated.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So you're saying that it's not outcome based. It's obedience based.
Yeah, it's obedience based, but it's pursuing the right outcome. And the right outcome is what you can choose. And if it's always dependent on somebody else cooperating, that's going to be a really frustrating healing journey. But if your desire truly is, I'm going to live a redemption story with God, then those choices are in your control and you can choose to be obedient in that. And, you know, that's something that it's taken me so much counseling to learn that I cannot control the choices of another person. And also because of that, I can't be held accountable to the choices of another person, but I can control my choices and I can be held accountable to my choices. And I am so dedicated to pursuing a redemption story with God. And so I think that's for somebody today who has felt like the person who hurt them hijacked their redemption story. And that's not true. They did not hijack your healing. They did not hijack your redemption story. You get to determine today. And that's really the empowering part of forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't this unfair gift that we have to give to the person who hurt us. So many of us think of it that way. But what forgiveness really is our opportunity to drive a stake in the ground and to say, I deserve to stop suffering because of this really awful, hard thing that happened. And so I am going to detach my ability to heal from choices that I can't control.
Wow.
And I am going to choose this beautiful gift that God is going to give me. That's where forgiveness originates from. It doesn't originate inside of me. It's I'm going to choose to allow God to give me this gift of forgiveness for my heart, most of all, to sever the source of suffering. I've suffered enough. And now I'm ready to step into healing. And that's really what forgiveness is.
Well, most people probably feel very much like a victim who have had something great done to them that they need to forgive. So what you just said is so completely paradigm shifting because you're helping them to see they're actually empowered and they take steps to be empowered in their pain when they see and their eyes are opened up to the fact that they can choose forgiveness as their course regardless of what the other person chooses, regardless of whether things end well or pretty. So where they might feel tempted to feel like they're a victim for good, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, and I understand that feeling of being a victim because when somebody has done something that is so hurtful to you and the impact of it is really great, it can feel like it can't ever be undone. Those words can't be unsaid. Those actions can't be unfelt. You know, the devastation can't be untangled, and the unchangeable can feel so very unforgivable.
Jeez.
But what I have just learned is that you have the ability to step into a future that's still beautiful. You have the ability to be able to look at your life and decide, if I want my life to be filled with joy and peace and positive productivity, and if I want my life to be beautiful, then I need to bring that so that I can step into it. Let me give you a little example that I think could help. Sometimes I have social anxiety. So I don't know if you guys know this about me. I don't know if either of you deal with this, but I don't like it when I'm invited to a party that's going to require me to have like 45 shallow conversations. I cannot tell you what it does to me. It just like sends me over the edge. I don't like being put in that position. And if I am put in that position, you will find me in one of two places. You'll find me hiding in the bathroom. Like I will have to go to the bathroom a million times, not because I actually have to go to the bathroom, but because I can go and be by myself and regroup and do some deep breathing, text a friend, check Instagram, something to make me not feel so anxious. Or the other place, not just the bathroom, or you'll find me standing next to the soda guy, because whoever they're paying to serve the water and soda at that gathering, he has to stand there and he has to talk to you. You can't move. So you'll find me in one of these two places, right?
I love it.
Best friends with a soda guy.
I love it so much.
So I was invited to this author gathering one time, and it sounded so good until I got there. And then I walked into the room and everybody had already paired up. They already had their little person, you know. Everybody was talking. And I was just like, I don't have a person. And if I just couldn't figure out what to do. Like I didn't want to interrupt somebody's conversation like, hey, so my name is Lisa. And just like you, I write books. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I went and like, you know, got something to eat and then went and checked in with the soda guy because, you know, he was very, very interested in what I had to say. And I went to the bathroom and then I was like, I can't do this. I literally cannot do this. So I said to the person running the party, you know, like, thank you so much. You know, I've got to run. And they were like, oh no, we need you to stay because in about, 20 minutes, we actually have something that we want you to stand up and say in front of everybody. And I thought, I'm not going to survive 20 minutes. So I said, okay. I said, let me run back to my room and I'll be back in 20 minutes. So I went to my hotel room and I walked in and I was like, Lord, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I cannot walk back into that party. And I mean, as God is my witness today, he grabbed a hold of my heart and he just said, Lisa, you are walking into that room as if you need to beg everybody for scraps of love and acceptance.
Wow.
When I created you, before you ever did one thing, just the very thought of you, I was already full of so much love for you and so much acceptance. You need to live from that place of love. Wow. So you walk into that party and you bring the acceptance that you wish was in that room. And you walk into that party and you bring the love that's in that room and you'll be the safest person in that room.
Wow. You're the soda guy now.
So I'm the soda guy now. So I walk into the room. I leave the hotel room, walk back into the party, and I can't say I did it perfectly, but I suddenly realized everybody in that room was filled with their own insecurities and their own little heart-shaped cup of emptiness that they were walking around with. And I decided to fill that room with love and acceptance, and it worked. And it started to change the trajectory of my life because I can walk into a space now and I can bring the love, the acceptance. And now with this forgiveness message, I can actually decide to pre-forgive people. Gosh. And it's so powerful. You know, when Jesus made such a big deal in the Lord's Prayer about forgiveness, I think it's because he knew what the hurting human heart needed.
Yes.
And I think he understood this is the rhythm of being a human. Eating, breathing, sleeping, talking, walking, forgiving.
Listening to Barry Manilow.
Sleeping. Listening to Barry. Yeah. Eating, breathing, sleeping, dancing to Barry. Walking, talking, and forgiveness.
Wow, Lisa.
That's insightful.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's all the categories.
Yeah, and it's not just for the hard and horrific stuff in our life. No. It is for our everyday survival.
Gosh. You mentioned BC and AD a minute ago, but in the book you also present RH as another category. Explain to people who are going to read about it when they read the book, but just I thought that was so helpful.
Yeah. So, that marked moment in time of our life of before crisis and after devastation. But really, I think we need to even take a cue from Jesus. I wish that it wasn't, before Christ and Anno Domini or after his death, but a resurrected hope, that we could just step into. Like, that's what Jesus stands for. It's not that he lived and he died, it's that he resurrected hope. And so that's what when I look back now, I try not to describe my life as like before this or after that, but I just try to step into resurrected hope because I've learned now when I tell the story, I listen to how I tell the story. And this is how we can know if we're healing. This is how we can know if we're walking in resurrected hope. When you tell the story, are you spending more time listing off all the ways that you were wounded? Or are you spending more time sharing that transferable experiential life wisdom that you've gained in the process that can help another person?
Wow.
That's when you know you've crossed over from living in the hurt to walking in resurrected hope and living in the healing.
So good.
Gosh,
So it's
that's
a new
so
thing to think of every
powerful.
time you see a Restoration Hardware. I'm never going to
RH.
see RH without thinking about resurrected hope, life after
Wow,
forgiveness.
that's so powerful.
I
Yeah,
love
all those Restoration Hardware lines on my credit card bill now. I'm just gonna say
Resurrected hope.
I'm making little deposits and donations to Resurrected Hope. Thank you, Levi.
Yes.
Who am I to
This will
step in the
help me.
way of you serving the risen Lord? I love how you connect theologically the resurrection to forgiveness and pulling, because that's such powerful imagery,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But we so often relegate the resurrection to, just when we go to heaven one day. But you're saying that the apostles had to you actually connect that they had to forgive God because they were so angry at how things hadn't gone. And you just give us permission to be angry, but to find power in the resurrection to pull us out of something that we would just remain sad otherwise and dejected, but to walk in that new hope.
Yeah, and I thought, when I wrote that chapter, I went back and forth. I'm like, do I title this chapter Forgiving God? But I felt like it was such an important chapter to tackle because it's not that God has sinned. It's not that God needs to be forgiven. But I think for so many of us, when our story has parts of it that are hard to reconcile, like how could a good God let that be part of the story? I think about even your story with Linya. I remember Jennie, you and I sitting around the gray table, and I said, Jennie, I feel like we're finally close enough for me to say, like, how did you drive away from the hospital that night and not take Linya with you? Like that just that thought of how can that be part of your story? How could a good God let that be part of the story? And I think so many of us have those parts of our story where it's really hard to reconcile this really awful thing that our all-powerful, all-knowing God allowed.
Yeah.
And so it was important for me to write a chapter that tended well to that, because otherwise I felt like a book on forgiveness would just be incomplete without it.
Yes.
That was incredible.
That's beautiful.
There's two things I want to say more about the book. One thing is how badly in the connecting the dots chapter, collecting the dots chapter, because you talk about collect dots, then connect dots, then correct dots. And I think that is a really helpful thing because I think a lot of times my tendency is to try and start connecting dots before I've collected them all. And I might be connecting dots, missing out on dots that are actually way prior to the actual event that set me up for it. And I think people are going to really find those three chapters, bang, 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 powerful. And the collecting the dots chapter, I wanted to go find those girls in your middle school, and I wanted to physically harm them. That was on behalf of Rat Boy. Because when you talk about your buck teeth and your frizzy hair and you didn't have the right clothes, and these two girls, they traded you in for their own social equity. Oh gosh, that chapter was so visceral, and you were so open about your pain and things you've gone through. And I just can't believe how generous you are to be so raw.
Yeah.
You were really raw. And I think there would have been a tendency for a lot of people to pull back reading that and go, okay, that was a good first pass. Now let's remove all of that because that was so out there, but and that's going to give everybody permission to go find their big journal, not their small journal, and to go really do some honest inventory about some of the things they've been through that might actually help them to see my problem started way back further than I actually think it did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much about our forgiveness journey is not about just the hurt that's in front of us. It's about the unhealed hurt and emotion that we pull into this present moment that is affecting us or maybe even preventing us from forgiving. You know, my counselor says this line, when it's hysterical, it's historical.
He's an amazing man, by the way. Jim Cress. I need to find Jim Cress because when he said hope is the melody of the future, but faith is walking in it today or dancing to it today.
Yes.
Oh that's the line? Is that it? Did I butcher that?
Yeah, you may have, but it's still beautiful.
Well, darn it, Lysa. Hope is the melody of the future, but faith is dancing to it today.
Yes, that's it.
My God.
Come
I was like, well, that man needs to preach something somewhere.
Seriously.
I guess he is. He's through
I call
you.
them Jim-isms. There's a bunch of Jim-isms in the book. And
that's true.
Yeah, when he said when it's hysterical, it's historical. And what he means by that is whenever we have an overreaction, whenever we bring way too much emotion into a situation of an offense, then that's a clue to us that we're not just reacting to what's in front of us. We're pulling unhealed past from our pain into this present moment, and it all gets multiplied. And so I've started paying attention to when I have an overreaction. And for me, you're not going to, I mean, sometimes you'll find me, like I wrote about in the book, where I was standing at the front door, slamming it and slamming it and slamming it again. And I did not know there was a delivery lady.
Was going to say, that's my actual favorite part of the story. I want to find that UPS woman. I think you should find her and interview her on your Instagram Live one day. I think that woman's perspective, I laughed so hard when I read that story.
Well, you know, she was probably like, and here's your package. Oh no, I'm just gonna set it right here. We're just gonna let this.
The best line though was where you said my initial reaction was to offer her a cookie, but then I thought, why would she want a cookie made by a flailing crazy woman?
Yes.
It's
No,
really
I
funny.
did. I had this thought, like, I need to chase after her. I need to tell her, like, I'm not crazy. Like,
and here's a
some
cookie.
Cookies I just
But
made.
then
And then
nothing
I
will
thought,
prove your sanity more than offering a cookie. That's how you're going to show her you're not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Here's a cookie.
Here's a cookie. I made it for you earlier.
Yes.
Sorry.
And I know you really, really want my cookies that I just made because you can tell how sane I am. So, yeah, no, that was not.
Do you remember when Pastor Stephen did that sermon on offense where he was slowly building up offense one plank at a time? And then by the end, he showed that he was completely disconnected from you. Yes. I'll never forget that, thinking about the word offense. It literally builds offense between you and somebody.
Exactly. And that is such a good picture of what happens. And most of the time, my hysterical response is not so external. I mean, it is if I'm in the safety of my own home, you know, and that poor delivery lady, like, I don't even know what she's thinking today. You know, she's probably going to get the book and she's like, oh my goodness, that's me.
You need to give her a signed copy of it.
I was the one trying to deliver her.
Does she still bring your UPS stuff by?
I don't know.
I've never had a female UPS driver. It's always been men.
Actually, just recently.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe she moved to Montana.
Maybe she left. She did your backup plan. She's like, that lady was too crazy. I'm out of here.
Just ask her, say, hey, did you ever deliver packages in North Carolina? And if she says yes, say, do I have a book for you?
She's like, well, I had to leave the state. There was a crazy flailing woman offering me cookies.
Yeah.
Screaming.
You know, my thing is that when life falls apart, like if my life ever just epically falls apart again, you know, my thing is I'm going to move to Montana and become a waitress. Like that's my thing, right?
Yes.
We're going to sit at your table all the time. We'll ask for your section.
Thank you.
Now you're going to find 1,000 people are going to read this book tomorrow. And the first thing they're going to do when they finish it is go, but what about, and I think that you are a freaking Jedi because you knew that. And so literally they're going to finish the last page and the next section is, I mean, there's a poem and all this they're going to read, but then you get to questions for Lysa where you preempt the questions they're going to ask. I think this book's worth buying just for the bonus things. Like there's like 60 pages.
You're the queen of bonuses.
But like the sections of the questions they're going to ask you, what the Bible actually says about forgiveness. People are going to get all these essays that they're not going to do as good on Audible. This would be one not to grab on Audible or get it on both. Do you ever do that, Lysa? Get a book on Audible and Kindle?
I do.
I love it because you can play the Audible while you're on the Kindle, and it follows the word, like on Sesame Street where the words bounce. That's my favorite. And you retain like twice as good because you're hearing and seeing it.
Yes.
But this would be a book to buy and get the actual resources, because those questions are, what made you do that?
Well, I felt like, well, first of all, my editor made me take out some parts of the book. And I was like, okay, we are not taking this out. We will put it in the Q&A in the back of the book. So some of my favorite little chunks of information that I think are really important got put in that Q&A.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. You know, there's a question in that Q&A. It's like, how do I forgive myself? And I studied that question and really considered making it a bigger part of the book. And then I decided to put it in the Q&A at the end, because the Bible doesn't actually address us needing to forgive ourselves. And I think really what that question is asking is not so much, you know, how do I forgive myself, but how do I let go of the shame or the regret of what I did and step into healing. And so it was important. Those questions are important. And there's also some good therapy that can happen.
You give a way to find a counselor that's a Christian in their city. You have, honestly, all the things that are going to be on people's mind when they finish this. If they just keep turning the pages, they're going to get to those things.
Yeah.
It's action steps. It's helpful resources. It's more scriptures. It's phenomenal. Forgiving what you can't forget. I cannot recommend this enough. There's someone in your life, I'm sure, who could benefit from a copy, as well as yourself. Get your Zoom group, get your small group going through it. Get it for you and a friend, and you and your spouse. And this is a legacy piece. Yes. This is a book that is going to timelessly be purchased. Think about it, Lysa. 100 years from now, if God tarries, we're all in heaven, but people are going to be reading this book. Just like you and I would read, Mere Christianity, to hear a story of forgiveness, because it's never going to not be relevant for people's lives.
Thank you, Levi. I appreciate that so much. And the video that you sent, you're such a good friend. You and Jennie both are just good friends. And on release day, you sent me a video, and it just spoke such life over me. I think sometimes people assume, if you write a book and you sell a bunch of copies, then you have all the encouragement that you need. But the encouragement that means the most, that's so life-giving, is when somebody knows you and loves you and speaks life over you. And, writing a book on forgiveness, this is like an invitation for the hounds of hell to come after me.
Yeah.
And you and Jennie both have been such life-giving friends in this process. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. You on airplanes these days? You stuck at home? What's going on with that?
Mostly at home, every now and then on an airplane with the mask and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And
what's your favorite mask?
Okay, Levi, I'm in a current mask crisis, if you want me to be really honest.
I'm constantly in a mask crisis. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I've tried the cloth one, tried the silk one, but honestly, I think the blue medical ones, that are supposed to be kind of temporary, I think I can breathe the best in those, because they don't suck into my mouth when I'm trying to take a deep breath.
Yes.
And all my other masks, it's like I'm breathing, it's like it goes right into my mouth.
It's so bad.
And if you're female and you're trying to wear lipstick, I know masks are important. Please don't write me letters about how I'm being disrespectful.
Oh, please do. But send them to me so I can read them and just
whatever.
laugh.
I want to be a team player. I want to care about everything. Yes, but I'm just telling you, as soon as I put lipstick on, it's time to put the mask on. And it's creating a lot of mental wear and tear on me. So,
yeah, we got those.
I am
black,
a team player.
I
am wearing my mask.
They have those the paper surgical ones. They sell in black. I feel like the black one's a little more forgiving, probably with lipstick, and you're not gonna have to see it at least. And
so your lipstick doesn't smear when you put it on, Levi?
I'm saying I see Jennie's mask. If they're white on the inside, you always see makeup. If they're black on the inside, you don't.
But
plus, I wear those too. And I mean, on camera, I have a little bit of makeup on, and you don't see it on a little. black
That's
mask.
good to know.
There's
Thank
makeup
you,
on
Levi.
it, but then there's also like the smearing. I mean, I guess I don't actually wear lipstick, so I don't really know. But like, I would imagine you put the mask on and then like the lipstick would just move around on your face.
Yes, it does.
And I've never
It
brushed my
does.
teeth more
I can
because you know what?
testify.
There's nothing worse than beef jerky breath in a mask. There's nothing worse.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, see, there you go.
Lisa's showing us
see?
proof.
Like if you're on an airplane and you're like, I
Yes.
need some beef jerky because I need protein. I don't want to eat carbs. I have a little beef jerky. And then your mask breath is like, dear God, I might die now. This
No,
beef
but
jerky.
let me tell you this
Seriously.
thought I've had. I thought, oh no, is this what other people have been smelling for years?
Oh yeah, I'm
When I
deeply
wasn't
scared.
wearing a mask,
I'm
I
highly afraid.
must attend to this.
I will buy 20 gallons of Listerine and never not have it with me.
Oh,
Yeah, gosh. And so Thanksgiving, it's Thanksgiving week, Lisa. Are you, I know, I'm sure a responsible amount of people are coming over to your house. Are you having the meal there? Where are you guys going out?
So it's just me, Art, and the kids. So we're keeping it pretty small this year.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, this is the first time ever in the history of the TerKhurst family that we're actually having the official Thanksgiving meal at one of our grown kids' house.
Oh, fun.
You guys, I feel like we have reached
Wow.
an epic level of, like, I actually feel like a grown up now. Like, I'm
Wow.
actually going to be able to go to my kids' house
Wow.
and they are carrying the stress. of
That's
wow,
exciting.
Thanksgiving.
That sounds amazing.
You're just bringing some yams over and
No, I'm not.
you're not
I'm
even bringing
not.
yams.
No. They, look, for 27 years, they haven't been bringing yams to
They
Thanksgiving.
didn't bring yams?
No, they just
No.
All
walked
on
from
you.
their bedroom downstairs and
All on
enjoyed
you.
all the fruit
All
of my
your,
labor.
yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm really excited about
Wow,
this.
that is next level. Like I didn't even think of that as a possibility. Like when that would happen. Like I've never thought of that.
That's
Yeah,
really
and the
real
exciting.
best thing of
thing.
all, it was their idea. They were like, "Hey, Mom, I think we want to like do Thanksgiving this year." And I said, "You do not have to let me even think about that. I don't even need to pray about that decision. Let me think." Yes.
Let me think. It's done.
Wow.
Lisa, are you reading anything right now you're enjoying besides being on a whirlwind book tour in
Yes,
your, your Zoom room?
I do. I always tend to have like several books that I'm reading. So I'm currently reading a Nicholas Sparks book. So that's not going to really impress you at all.
That impresses
But
me.
I'm
You
also
don't, hey, you don't have to
reading-
impress me. You already have my impressed.
Oh,
already done.
It's true.
But I'm also reading a book right now called Alcohol Explained. And it is really good.
Wow.
Just talking about the realities of the addictive nature of alcohol, but what a lie the addiction is. And I'm always learning. I've always got some kind of psychology book that I'm reading, and typically a fiction book, and every now and then a nonfiction book. So I don't know. I'm a learner. I took a test recently, and by recently I mean last night, and
It's really recently.
So recent.
it's helping me discover my communication IQ. So that's going to be my next book is Communication IQ. But I
Wow.
discovered that I am a contemplator, which means that I lead my life not with feelings or gut instinct, but with thinking. And I've been told my whole life I'm an overthinker. And then this book is helping me discover that that's actually God's gift,
Wow.
that my thinking is God's gift. And so I'm
Yes.
going to
Wow.
embrace that.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And have you made it through The Crown yet? I know you enjoy that show, the new season.
No, I haven't. Now my kids enjoy that show. But
Oh, you don't? I thought you said you did.
No,
No.
my kids like that show.
It's,
So
it's
no,
amazing.
I'm I'm into the Great British Bake Off show.
Oh.
That is
But
a great show.
I finished every episode, including the Christmas special. So I'm currently
Well,
Without a
currently
show.
in a lull.
there's British
right now.
food in The Crown. You would be just happy to watch it.
All right.
Did you watch like Westminster Abbey? Any of that stuff?
Downtown.
Yeah, I
Abbey.
did.
Downton
Downton
Abbey.
Abbey.
I didn't.
I knew what you meant.
Westminster.
I'm just
Mr.
impressed
Abbey.
that you're in touch with your feminine side enough that you would know
what that
Downton
show
Abbey.
is. We
Yeah.
watched Downton Abbey together. I trailed off towards the end. We were really into it for a little while.
We both did. And then I
then we-
recently watched the movie.
We
and
watched
that
the
was
movie.
Good.
It was good. But I love The Crown. Because I love the way The Crown intersects with other... Like, The Crown's great. I love how it intersects with other major world events.
Okay.
You know, with the moon landing, or in this season, Princess Di, which I guess wasn't out external events. That was internal. But that's the Billy Graham. Like, it's just, you see all
History.
these things going through. It starts out with Winston Churchill as the prime minister, and now Margaret Thatcher is. And so you're going through all these different... I really
Okay,
think it's
well,
great.
You've won me over. I will stay tuned. I will tell you
Stay tuned.
about my thoughts with this.
Yes.
Well, Lisa, we want to be respectful of your time. It's 2-hour time difference in the East Coast of the United States of America.
We've
but
literally watched the window behind you. It's like
sun.
dark
I was
outside
going to say
now.
we've watched. Which it's probably
We've
going to be
seen
dark
the
in like
sunset.
3 minutes. Our days are so short right now. It gets
Yeah.
sunrise is 7:30. Sunset is like 4:40. So our day is pretty short.
Time to move to North Carolina.
Time to move. That's the only outcome there.
Yeah.
It's dark. Days are short. Time to move to North Carolina.
Yeah, so
Not-
when my life falls apart, my plan is to move to Montana. If your life falls apart, move to North Carolina. So there we go.
What if
Yes.
our lives fall apart simultaneously and we,
We
We'll
we
meet in
pass
the
each
middle.
other? We pass each
There's a
other
song.
like ships. in
We
the night.
started off with a song. There's a song about Meet Me in the Middle. It's a country song.
Oh.
If my life fell apart, I think I would want to stay in Montana.
Perfect. Well,
So I'm
I'll
already
meet
here.
you in Montana then.
Okay.
We'll meet you in
That,
Montana.
I feel like that needs to be a song.
I'll meet you in Montana.
Meet you in Montana.
I guarantee that's the song.
I'll meet you in Montana.
I'll
Yeah.
meet you in Montana.
Well,
Or
Fresh Life has an awesome music team, so go write that song.
Yeah.
we're gonna get right on that. Happy Thanksgiving! Congratulations on this
Thanksgiving.
release.
Yes.
Good luck finding the UPS woman because she needs. Okay, I know I said I'm gonna let you go, but Jennie gives me a hard time. I never let people go fast.
Oh no.
There's got to be at least 2 goodbyes.
Check this out. Wait, no. Blah, blah, blah.
Very fun. What is your, speaking of UPS women, what's one of your favorite or most embarrassing things you've had to buy on Amazon lately or on the internet in general? It could be from any website.
In 2020?
It could be favorite thing or
Okay, well,
or
I'm not
weirdest thing.
actually going to answer this question. I'm actually going to tell you a funny story that relates to somebody that goes to your church.
Oh.
Yes. So remember when we were about to go on tour, you and Jennie, and then me and my family, we were going on our tour, right?
Yeah.
And so Kelly, who goes to your church, sings on the Fresh Life worship team, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she said, "Oh, I have these amazing pajamas that I'm going to send you." And so she sent me these awesome pajamas. They really are amazing. I mean, they're very conservative too. Long pants, long sleeve
Conservative.
shirt, everything.
Conservative too.
They are. It's important for me to say that because when she sent the box right before we went on tour last year, the box came, and on the outside of the box in very big letters, it said "The Naked Princess."
That's really funny.
And I had a staff meeting that day
Oh my God. have
at my
mercy.
house, and the box was on the front steps. I didn't know it. So like 10 of my staff members stepped over this box on the way into my house with the word "Naked Princess"
Naked
on the box
Princess.
that had obviously been delivered to my house. I
Maybe
was
that's the title of
so
your next book.
Mortified.
Naked
No,
Princess.
I can tell you. Let me think about that. No. But
Oh
I was
my-
greatly relieved
That's
when I
funny.
opened it up, and it truly was just pajamas. But then I wanted to call all my staff members and say, "Hey,
Just so you
guys,
know.
I would like to keep them
You know.
guessing. I would never want to call them.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
so
That's
that was
funny.
my
It could be a series. The
embarrassing
next one
UPS
could be the
story.
Naked Cowboy. It could be oh, no, he's in Times Square.
Okay, Jennie, time to wrap this one up. We cannot let him go on this. We cannot let him ride
Wow.
this train any longer.
No.
I
Perhaps.
love you guys.
Perhaps we've
Happy
taken the train
Thanksgiving.
perfectly into the station.
Levi.
Lysa TerKeurst, everybody.
Bye bye.
We love you, Lisa. Thank you.
I love you guys too. You're the best.